foreseeing federal guidelines, this meeting will be conducted electronically. You may watch the meeting live streamed with the URL that is there on the screen. I guess if you don't have that, it's www.afcity.org/agenda center. And public comments were accepted prior to 5 p.m. today to be read and acknowledged in the meeting. Carolyn, did we receive any comments?
We did not.
We did not. Okay. So we will go ahead with our meeting. We will start with a pledge of allegiance, after which we'll have an invocation by Council Member Stacy Carroll. If you would like to, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure how this should work. I have a flag here in my office, so I'll be standing, and you're free to do as you would like if you have a flag available there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank thee for this day. We thank thee for all thou hast given to us. We're grateful for our many blessings. We're grateful that we can meet together today. Please bless us that we will meet with a spirit of cooperation and help our minds to be active and to be inspired by thee. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Councilmember Carroll. We appreciate it. Since we do not have any comments, we will forego the 20-minute comment period, and we will go directly to Mr. David Bunker for the City Administrator's report.
Thank you. I just have one item, and that is to report that our webmail certificate has expired today. And for some reason, it was not renewed, but we are working on that. George has sent in the renewal. There may be a 24 to 48 hour period where emails are not coming and going from the AF City webmail account. So George can probably give us more information on that, but there is an issue with our webmail account right now. So
yeah, thanks, David. I'm working on it now to see what exactly we're up against, but the SSL certificate did expire, and I'm working close with Rock Mountain Tech, and it is renewed. Some will see it come up a little quicker, but it could take a while for it to go through. So I'm working with Brody right now with Rock Mountain Tech to see exactly what portions will remain down for extended period, but I'm working on that now. So.
Okay, thank you very much for that update.
One last thing, Mayor Pro Tem, if I could, and that is on Saturday night, we had an event here in American Fork, which was Cruise Main Street event for all of the community, and specifically for the seniors of American Fork High School graduating class 2020. It was a lot of fun. Clark and Stacy were both there, and we got our fill of cookies and donuts and all kinds of fun stuff there. But it was nice to see everybody support that event, and would really like to just thank the Chamber of Commerce for all of the work that they did to help pull that off, and then also to our public safety, to the fire and police departments. They supported us very well and made sure that we were safe. No accidents, no bad things happened, so it was good. Other than you know, some of us ate too much. That was one of the bad things. So anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, David. I also have neglected to, I started the meeting when I saw that it was 7 o'clock and I knew we were waiting. I started without recognizing that Mayor Frost has asked to be excused from the meeting this evening. His daughter graduated from American Fork High School today, and they are having a family gathering, and he had asked if I would conduct this meeting. So we excused the mayor. We appreciate him and we will, I overlooked that. I apologize. So, okay, we'll go right into our council reports. Let's mix it up and head a different direction. Stacy, why don't we have you go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I first wanted to comment on the Memorial Day video that was put together by the cemetery committee and our police and fire, and I know Kevin had a hand in that. And I just found it very touching, and in some ways it was very poignant, maybe because it was different than what we normally do. But I wanted to compliment everybody who was involved on that video, and it was easy for me to share it electronically with people. So that was also another nice touch. So I give my compliments for that. The other thing that I was going to give a report on was the Chamber's events. So the Cruise on Main was pretty much the first in-person event that we have done with the Chamber, and even then it was outside, and we tried to keep distance, and we were doing things to make sure that we were following any protocols. And it was really fun to have people coming down the street with their cars decorated and honking their horns and seeing their new graduates. The next event, I just saw it come by on my email earlier today, but I didn't read the email, so I apologize that I don't have any details for you right now. But this is what they're calling their very first in-person event, because it's a chamber-wide event. What is their Women in Business? And they are starting up a Women in Business group. And I think it's the middle of June, if anybody saw that besides me, but they're having a speaker from For Foods Group. Correct me if I'm wrong, because normally I verify these details before I share them. But that is going to be their first in-person event. And I'm excited.
Councilmember Carroll, that's on June 16th. And Shauna Smith, who's the president of the 4 food groups, will be the key speaker there. And it's June 16th, 11:45 a.m. at the Hyatt House in Pleasant Grove.
Okay. And I do know this one. Thank you, David. I do know this one. They originally had it scheduled for March, I believe, and they've had to push it back and push it back. And I'm really hoping that it will come to fruition this time, because they've been wanting to start this Women in Business group to support women entrepreneurs and women who work in business. So I'm excited and look forward to that. That's all I have to report today.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Carroll. Councilmember Barnes.
Okay, get you off the mute. Just a couple of quick things. I too saw the Memorial Day video that was produced. I was very pleasantly surprised with it. I had seen an earlier version of it, which in all honesty, I had a few problems with, 1 or 2 of which were kind of major. But they made some really nice adjustments from the first version that they kind of put out to that final one. I thought it was done very appropriately. And obviously I get critical of those things because I have an interest in them, but they did a really great job. And so I don't know really who to thank, David. I know Camden had a lot to do with it. The cemetery committee had a little bit to do with it, and obviously the police and the fire did. And our communications guy, I forget his name, sorry.
His name is Travis, and he is really good.
He did a great job with it. The video was really good. The drone, the use of the drone and the other things. And if anybody hasn't seen it, it is on the city website, I understand. I had to access it a different way, but I understand it is there. And I apologize, I missed the cruise. I would have loved to have been there. But I had a granddaughter that was having a graduation party that night. She graduated from Pleasant Grove High, and we had a family activity with both sides of the family and lots of people. So I needed to be there instead. So that is all I have tonight.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Barnes. Councilmember Shelton.
Thanks. The only thing, a couple of things to report on. I think the cruise was awesome to be able to hear about that. I wasn't able to participate or attend, but glad to hear it. And also the Memorial Day program. I think some of the best things about the whole COVID situation is it makes you have to get out of the box and think creatively about different things, about how you can still do various events or functions or still accomplish what you're trying to do with social distancing and leveraging technology. And I'm hoping that that creativity stays as we look at different ways to reach out and touch people and serve them as a city. The two reports I have are first on the beautification committee. They met kind of more informally through some electronic communication, just touching base on Steel Days and on the flower pots on Main. Those continue to be an issue of needing to be watered on a regular basis, and there's some looking at trying to outsource that currently to someone that could be able to on a regular basis go water those. If you guys have any strong feelings about the flower pots on Main and having those ongoing, I'd love to hear those from you offline. Just send me some comments or give me a call. Love to hear what your thoughts on that are. The only other item to report on is the dispatch. We had our board meeting and we're getting ready to adopt the final budget. One thing coming out of that we're looking at is our our fund balance is higher than normal or than what we usually like to target for. And that just comes into play from some capital expenditures not costing as much. Due to that, we're looking at taking the radio reprogramming. The police channel will be split where it'll be Lehigh, American Fork, Saratoga Springs, and Eagle Mountain on one police channel. And that splitting requires reprogramming of all the radios. And right now that's being passed on to the cities. We're looking to pick up that cost, and we'll have that discussion at the next board meeting to see if we can't leverage some of that fund balance to go towards paying for that. There's some thought that Pleasant Grove should bear the whole cost, and that's a viable argument that because they joined, that is the reason for the split. But each city has grown and hired new officers and brought new radios on over the years. And some argue that PG is just the one that tipped us over the point where we have to split the channel. So anyway, my thought is that we use that capital improvement to pay for it from the district. But if you guys have any other thoughts or feelings on it, reach out and let me know. That's all I have.
Thank you, Rob. Councilmember Christiansen.
I'm glad to be here, even though I'm not here. It's nice to be able to participate, even though I'm out of town. And I just appreciate all the work that everybody's gone to do things like that cruise and things to recognize people. I appreciate that. The library had its first day today. I haven't heard a report, but we had a trial run on Friday before I left town and practiced. The people have worked so hard to do this, basically the same amount of work with fewer people and everything. It's worked out so well. Just really appreciate everyone and the attitude that they've had. Thanks to our community members, and just appreciate people so we understand. We're learning what's important in life, and it isn't necessarily some of the frills that we have. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate that. I just have a couple of things to mention. I thought the cruise was a lot of fun, and seeing the cars and seeing the effort and our tremendous chamber, our police force, our public safety people, it was wonderful. And I thought to myself, we ask a lot of the seniors this year to shelter in place at a time when, that's the last thing on their minds. This is their last portion of high school. They're closing a wonderful chapter in their lives, probably most of them a wonderful chapter in their lives. And there was an awful lot asked of them to shelter in place, but I thought our kids did a tremendous job in doing that. And the celebration was it was fun. It was nice. I love to see the involvement of our businesses. It was fun to see the banners out on Main Street and State Street, congratulating them, the professionally printed ones. And they had gone to a lot of work. A lot of people made special offers for them, and it just really appreciated everyone coming out and doing that. So that was a wonderful thing. Also, a bit of good news. As you know, I've reported for the last several meetings on what's been happening at Fox Hollow. The level of caution that we have been taking, and the level of just doing things right, making sure that all things were sanitized and everything. And that got some notice because the Utah section of the PGA called us 2 weeks ago and asked us if they could have the state championship at Fox Hollow. And so tomorrow, the state championship for 5 and 6A will be held at Fox Hollow with all the necessary precautions. There won't be a banquet after or anything like that, but it's nice to know that the PGA would recognize our course and as a group of people that have been doing things right and have taken the necessary precautions. And so we got that nod this year, which is good. It's a sanctioned event by the high schools, but it's not put on by the high schools. And so that's how they were able to make that happen. So girls golf state championship for 5 and 6A will be tomorrow at Fox Hollow. So appreciate all of them and the readiness that they've had to be able to take that on. It's quite a feather in our cap. So also on the agenda, folks, I have in true fashion, whenever I'm asked to do this, I have skipped over an item, and I don't know whether it is within the rules of order that we need to have an official roll call, but I would just like to let Terrell-Lynn know that all council members are here and accounted for, with only the mayor being absent. So we will, and he has been excused, as I mentioned earlier, so we will forego the roll call and go right into our common consent agenda unless I am advised otherwise. So hearing that I'm not, we will go ahead and go into our common consent agenda, which consists of the April 28th, 2020 City Council minutes, the May 5th, 2020 work session minutes, approval of the May 5th, 2020 special session minutes, approval of the authorization to release the improvement construction guarantee for the Furry Tail transformations, approval of the authorization to release the improvements durability retainer of the Groskebauer subdivision, approval of the authorization to release the improvements of construction guarantee for the Groskebauer subdivision, and approval for the authorization to release the improvements durability retainer for the Hanson Ranch Phase 1. Those are the items in our common consent agenda. Terrell-Lynn, have there been any changes to the minutes?
None have been submitted.
Okay. If there's no questions, I will accept a motion for the common consent agenda.
I move to approve the common consent agenda.
We have a
Second,
motion from Councilmember Carroll and a second from Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor, myself, I will vote aye as well. Thank you. Moving on to the action items. Action item number 1, ratification of city payments from May 6th to May 19th, and the approval of purchase requests over $25,000. Any questions or anything from staff on advising us on this?
I did notice on one thing on all those soccer reimbursements or refunds, a couple of them, there would be, like for one family, there'd be 3 different notations. One would be for 3 kids, and then one would be for one of those 3, and another one for another one of those 3. And I was wondering if that was like for spring and some of them paid for fall, or what the situation was.
David, can you speak to that?
Normally, it depends on the program that they signed up into, if, we refund it that way. But there could have been some that got refunded, as a whole family at once. But normally it's division by division that we refund.
So that is something maybe we can check on, Barbara. It doesn't look like
Okay.
Derek's on the call, so we'll check on that and get a little bit more clarification on that.
Okay, good idea.
Are you comfortable with, I know we're not there yet, but are you comfortable with the approval noting that?
I think so.
Okay,
It's gone over by several important financial people. I think that they would have caught it.
any other questions? I will accept a motion then for the ratification of city payments.
I move to ratify the city payments from May 6th, 2020 to May 19th, 2020, and approve the purchase requests over $25,000.
Have a
I'll
motion.
second.
I have a motion from Council Member Christiansen and a second from Council Member Carroll. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll call for a roll call vote. Council Member Christiansen,
Aye.
Council Member Shelton,
Aye.
Council Member Barnes,
Aye.
Council Member Carroll,
Aye.
and I will vote aye also. Thank you. Item number 2, review and action on an ordinance approving the disbursement of fiscal year 2019-2020 park tax funds. We have had multiple meetings on this, and as you can see from the document, it falls in line with most of the things that we discussed at our last work session. Are there any changes or questions, comments that we would like to talk about this evening?
Oh, at the last work session, I suggested that we think about coming up with some money so that we could get the sewing machines for the New Friends Quilt Circle. And I wondered if anybody had any ideas. I had one possible idea myself. I don't know if that would be feasible. You want to
I'm
hear?
happy to hear it. Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
love to hear your,
let us hear it, Barbara.
Okay, I'm looking at under TAF, go up just a little bit more. No, the other way. The other up. Under Heritage and History Pageant has $4,500. And they did not put it on this year, so that money would roll over. Can we take that $2,400 for the sewing machines out of that 45?
okay, I thought it was more than that for, like, didn't they need 6,000 something
They did
or
need
other?
six. They did need 6,000. That is correct.
They
Yeah.
had requested the 6 is what I remember. They were given the 2,400 and then
Okay,
they sent the letter saying the 2,400 won't help us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they were able to buy in quantity and get a better price, and without
Right.
that, they couldn't do that.
well, if we could still use the Heritage and History Pageant money, that's sort of earmarked for them under this thing. If they're not going to need it because they didn't do it this year, they could just roll over that money from the year that we're in right now to put it for next year, and both programs could be doing very well that way.
Okay, so the History and Heritage Pageant, did they not do it last? When is it? It's like in the summer.
Yeah, it was going to be this year, wasn't it going to be like in May or something?
Oh, so you're saying they're not going to be doing it this summer? That makes sense.
Kevin, when was that scheduled? Is that not with the cemetery group?
The cemetery group does not really work with them like they used to, as you're familiar with. They've kind of broken off and done their own thing. I think historically, at least the last few years, it's been in the July, August timeframe. And that has been a little bit of the problem because of the vacations and the conflicts and the hot weather. So I think they were looking, or something tells me they were talking to maybe doing it more late August or even into early September.
I thought I read somewhere that they were doing it early in the summer so that they completely canceled it for 2020 this summer.
You very well may have. I probably missed that one.
I'm
Yeah,
going
honestly,
back
no.
and I've opened up the document and the quilting equipment grant, the request was for $25,000, $24,970.
But that was not just the sewing machines.
Correct, correct.
I want to fund the
What I'm
sewing
saying is
machines.
I don't know what the exact breakout number
Yeah.
is on those.
I couldn't find that either, but I was thinking that was 2,400, but you're right, 2,400 is what we offered.
At
I
24,000.
really think it was that
6,000 was
6,000.
the full ask, yeah. Well, I mean, we can allocate these funds however we think is in the best interest of everyone involved. I mean, that's why it's before us now. So if you feel strongly about that, Barbara, you know, how does anyone else feel?
I just had a quick question. I think that kind of falls on that same line. Went back and listened to those broadcasts again, and I think it's great that we have them online, that we can do that now. And you know, there was a lot of conversation, and Clark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but seemed as if the arts got a little less funding this year, and there was some thought there that they couldn't hold some of their events and things of that nature, and so perhaps the money from this year wasn't spent, and that would be available for them going forward because they didn't spend as much. So I don't know how those unexpended funds are treated, and I think that'd be important to know. Just as Barbara suggests, how do we look at that from a staff perspective? Was that already considered and rolled back into the amount we're allocating?
If I could just kind of address that briefly. So in the ordinance that is going before you tonight for passage, Section 10 has a specific provision related to the COVID-19. When the committee got together as far as allocating funds, the initial discussions, Camden may correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't believe they considered fully money that was going to be carried over, because it never went back into the pot.
We did
We
not.
have had requests from a number of the organizations, Harrington being one of them, that the monies be allowed to be rolled over into the next year to be used for the same type of purpose. For example, Harrington has some concert in the park money that would get rolled over into the next summer, and they'd be allowed to use it for this next fiscal year as well.
Yeah, there was no consideration prior to that. And by the way, I found the amount. It was $6,400 was the request for those machines.
I'm sorry, I read that wrong or remembered wrong.
No, that's fine.
So as I look at that, then according to the report, if I'd go back and look at it, but if Reggie's report showed that 4,500 was still there, that's going to roll forward. So according to Barbara, they'd have a $9,000 in that line item for this next year. Then, according to what you just mentioned there, Sherilyn.
That's correct.
So if that's the case, I take a look at it. I would be supportive of that suggestion that Barbara had.
Well, I'm a little confused by that because it seems like this history and heritage pageant would be for this coming summer, like this
Except that
summer.
it-
And so it
except-
hasn't not happened yet. Because
Well,
the
I guess
July 1st.
in the contract that was signed by Timpanogos Arts Foundation was those funds had to be expended by June 30th of 2020. So when they get this next cycle of funds, those have to be spent by June 30th of 2021. So if the pageant hasn't occurred or isn't going to occur prior to June 30th of 2020, then those funds should be rolled over into the next year.
A question
Yeah,
is,
but these funds are for 2021.
right, the question is, did the history pageant happen last summer? Did it happen in July, August, September of last year?
I thought I read that they had rescheduled it to do it earlier in the year, like it has already been canceled, like it's already been passed over. It's been too late to do it.
Okay.
I couldn't find the reference on that. I was hoping somebody would know.
So I'm just taking a look here. In our last packet we had on 5/19 of 2020, in the report that was given, we have down that in that budget for the Heritage and Park that they were allocated $6,962.81. And they said that they have not spent any of that money. And there's a note here. I'm happy to share that document if I'm allowed to, but
That's-
is that possible?
Or just, and what does the note say?
Pageant was to be held in April 2020, canceled due to coronavirus. So they've
Okay, so
got
then, yep, definitely they have that money in.
dollars sitting in there. So that's actually more money than was going to be allocated this year to that.
Correct.
So if that's the case, Barbara, I'd be very supportive of looking at that. My only question is that 40, gosh, I got to jump back here. I feel like I'm playing an organ here with all these screens sometimes.
no.
So then we have to find another, what, I can't remember exactly how much
We
this
pulled
was,
the, yeah, we pulled
another
the 2,000 out that we had, and now there's none there. So we have to come up with a full 6,400.
right, but if we gave them the History and Heritage Pageant 4,500, then we have
You're about
another
you're about 1,900 short.
board. Okay. And any ideas of where to take that from?
I've got 50 cents in my pocket.
Oh, that's hard.
Is there
Yeah.
any other money in that account from the current year or from a prior year that's been left over or unassigned or anything like that? I find it hard to believe that we spend every single penny every time.
Well, yeah, she was saying that see this number 10 on your screen? It says that they can roll it over, whatever they didn't spend.
So
I saw that, but other groups that have already held their activities that maybe were a 1 or 2 time thing, if there's money there or somewhere else is what I'm asking. And then I would like to come back to paragraph 10 when we get through this little discussion.
and I was looking at our packet on page 23. I don't know if we can go there. I guess I was looking at this and I probably should have looked at the actual agreement because I thought we would be there. It's showing $2,000 going to the Friends of the Quilting Circle already in our current allocations.
Yeah,
but I guess-
that was the proposed allotment.
That was the preliminary one, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's actually misplaced. It should be the one that is down in the packet, Rob. That's what, 4 pages below that, 3 pages below that.
Gotcha. Maybe I got just confused. 'Cause it said this is what it currently stands at, but must just be a typo then.
Okay, maybe I'm getting confused now. The
Okay, so
$2,000 that's next to the Friends of the Quilting Circle, I actually thought that was for something, that's for fabric and things for the Quilts of Valor. And then the
The actual
6,400,
amounts that we are being asked to distribute start on page 25 of your packet. And they start with that ordinance. You can see the exact amounts that are in that. On item number 3, excuse me, no, it starts for authorized in item number 1, Utah Pioneers for 1,200. The fiscal year Alpine Community Theater for 30,000. Then the Harrington Center, you see their items, and that goes through. Those are all the official amounts for this year. That is coming from our park committee. That is the recommendations from the park committee.
Those are after the withdrawal of the $2,000,
Correct.
correct? Yep.
So if we take let's just look at it this way. If we take the history pageant and we contribute the $4,500 to that, if that leaves us 1,900, what if we just took equal amounts, percentages off of each of the items And, you know, between the, how many are there?
Just the top ones or all of them?
I'm counting.
Or anything over $5,000. And we took $100 from those. There's at least 19.
Are you counting the ones in number 8?
Counting the ones in number 8. I'm counting the ones in number 7, number 6. I'm
Okay,
talking
you're
about
going up
anything
to
over
those two. Okay.
$5,000. So we would leave the dictionary project alone. But all of those others, we would pull $100 from each of those until we had $1,900 that we could put towards the quilts. That's not a fair percentage, but everyone helps share the amount there. Or we can go to the largest one and pull $1,900 out of that.
Well, I guess I'm just adding this up here real quick. That was on page 23 of the packet. I'm going to go back and forth, but it added up to 920,000. And wasn't that what we were trying to budget for?
Seems like that was pretty close if it isn't exact. It was 900 and something.
One thing that is missing from this ordinance, Councilmember Carroll noted there was supposed to be 2,000 allocated to the Quilted Circle group that has been removed from this and should be in there. So what's on your screen now showing that 2,000 should be included in this ordinance and is not in this ordinance. It got taken out in when they asked to when they said that they were not able to accept the money for the sewing machines, it inadvertently got taken out in its entirety. So that does need to go back in.
That was the difference between the two, Rob. So I looked at that and saw that in there and made that assumption, which was incorrect.
Okay.
The boat harbor was not in there either. So that is the correct amount with that in there. So that is right on page 23.
So any motion passed, if that 2,000 is going back in, we just need to address that in the motion and we'll update that ordinance before signature.
And then the other question I have is on the children's programming room, the 110,000. If someone could just remind me of what that expense is for and when we expect that to happen, time in the year, the fiscal year that would take place.
I can try and speak to that. So this current park tax year, we're trying to get the design work done. This is for construction of the facility, although the park board said that they would like to, if possible, apply additional funds from the next program year if additional funds are needed. They knew that this was probably only a portion of it. And so based off design work, we're going to try and schedule it so that it begins near the end of the year, so that hopefully we can kind of roll both program years together and take advantage of 2 years worth of funding.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I thought that's what I remembered, but so I would take the 1,900 from the library, knowing that we're going to bridge 2 fiscal years anyway, and that's a rough estimate. And we can always allocate that extra 1,900 if we have to, but we could look at how sales tax collections coming in, just because they're not starting it for almost a year away. I would suggest just taking that 1,900 from there.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Camden, did you say that is then that 110,000 is all for design?
No. The funds that we
Okay.
had this year, which was like 60-something thousand things for design,
Okay.
that's part of the construction.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
This is basically the room itself, the building, is it the physical facility?
Yes,
Is it not?
correct. Yeah, that's a portion of it.
So my question is, do we have to account for the 2,000 from the Friends of the Quilting Circle since it isn't in your other list, as you pointed out, Clark?
We need to put that in, as Sherilyn just advised, we need to put that in.
So
It has been accounted for though in the actual dollars. It
in
just
the
got
other
taken out of
numbers,
the
okay,
ordinance.
thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
So it sounds to me like what we are suggesting from what Rob has said is we will take the money from the Timpanogos Arts Foundation, the $4,500 for the history pageant, and we will apply that to the Friends of Quilting for their machine grant of $6,400. Take the remaining $1,900 out of the children's programming room from the library for that full $6,400. Is that correct, Rob?
That's what, yeah, I think would make most sense to me.
You gonna make a motion on that?
Just, I had one other question. I didn't want to cloud the discussion item we were on right there.
And I've got one other after you get yours done.
Let's
Okay.
go ahead, proceed, Rob. What's your next
I
question?
know that we had talked a little bit about in the past about matching funds. I know there was a little bit of a crazy thing going last year about what was matching, what was not, but just personally, I would love to see that be a staple for Timpanogos Arts Foundation to look for those. I don't think it's different as we look at a lot of grants that are out there that we as a city are going for. A lot of those are matching of some nature and of some fashion. And I went back and looked through the last financials. There are some programs of the Timpanogos Arts Foundation that does a great job through various activities, and there's others that there's none at all. I would just, I don't know, that's something to me, but I know they're not getting their full ask anyway, right? So I kind of battled back and forth, but I would like to see that matching component be something ongoing that we're trying to encourage. These dollars would be stretched further and could do more good as we did those matches. So just some thoughts.
I think that I don't think that's much of a departure, Rob, from what we had talked multiple times before with fundraising or matching funds. We talked about that with TAF multiple times. So I don't think that's going to come as any kind of surprise to them, because we brought that up a number of times before. We just
Do you want that matching fund language put in their contract again this year? And if so, what are qualified matching funds?
I don't know whether we'd be able to put it in this year, Cheryl Lynn. Like Rob said, they're not getting their full ask anyway. It would just be one of those things that's strongly encouraged. However, just like every other thing, if we have no way to, or if we exercise no way to police that, it doesn't make much of a difference anyway. I was a little more encouraged from our presentation last time that we received from TAF, more than I have been in the past with things that are happening. And I don't know whether that's with Reggie coming on full time, but it did seem like there was some positive momentum. Tough for that to come in the COVID year, but I think that language should be still encouraged to be in there, and it will be clearly communicated. I don't know if how any of the rest of the council feels in terms of making that a mandatory thing.
I, for some reason, almost thought we had come really close to making it mandatory for this year. I'm not saying we did, but it seemed like there was enough discussion and emphasis that it was kind of mandatory for this year and going forward. I'm not opposed to letting it go one more year, but I wonder if we're just going to keep kicking that can down the road. It's a question.
No, and I, for answering in behalf of the park committee, that, if we did strongly encourage that, it was only strongly encouraged with the park committee. There was no mandatory match ever discussed.
By the council?
By the park committee. So that was never direction. I don't recall that being a mandatory thing from the council either. Does anyone else remember that?
But we did discuss it though, right?
We absolutely discussed.
That's all I'm saying.
And we have for multiple years.
Well, last year, there was a provision for their administrative fee that had to have some sort of matching funds. And then we had a big discussion about what includes matching funds about halfway through the year.
Yeah.
So we did have some requirement, but it wasn't qualified enough for us to make a determination. So I'm guessing that's why Rob's bringing it up again. Do we want to define that or just encourage it?
And I would just jump in here and suggest I don't want to make things more complicated and have to have a big spreadsheet of what's a qualifying match expense or revenue and what's not. The Form 990 is required by the IRS for every nonprofit to file. And on the Form 990 under Part 8, 1C, it has a line item that you have to list the revenue from your fundraising events. And I think we leave that to the IRS definitions that have already been defined and to their CPA that's filing that every year. So as they're doing their financials throughout the year, whatever goes in that line item would be available for the match, would be my thought, just to try to simplify things.
Sounds like that would be very appropriate.
Well, the
I like that from a contract perspective. That's easy for me to put that language in there. The only question is how much of their funds are going to require a match and are, if any, this year.
Well, and my argument has been since last year that in the effort to try to make them sustainable, I want them to charge for their events in such a way that would make them more like a business. So I wanted them to be able to use their revenues as part of their fund match.
I've got that 990 pulled up. Again, happy to share that if it's possible to do, but they give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories to utilize in that fundraising item. So
Bendlin, are you giving the screen to Rob or are you bringing that document up yourself? I noticed that ours went off. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I'm giving it to Rob so that
Go ahead, Rob. Share that if you would, please.
it just says I've been disabled. So, but if you have a second screen or something, you could do a Google search for Form 990 and look at that.
Zoom has made some interesting changes as of late that say it says whenever we've tried to share it in my business, the host is disabled. And so there is something special you need to do now, Vendelin, that will allow that. I'm never the host, so I can't tell you what that is, however.
Oh, there we go.
Try now. This should do it.
Got it. Let's see here. Let's make sure I'm sharing the right appropriate thing, right? Joking. So I don't know if you guys can see that okay or not.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the Form 990. This is the 2019 version, but typically they stay pretty similar. But here's your contributions, gifts, grants, and other amounts. I think what Stacy's referring to is program service revenue, where they're charging for their events. Again, I'm not a CPA, but that's what I've seen from my experience on nonprofit boards. So you have kind of different line items. You have membership dues, which I was glad to see some of TAF does charge membership dues for to be a part of. So, I think we just need to decide what is matching. If we want to say all of revenue is matching, we could, but then I think that just changes the percentage of what we require, right?
That could be an option. That
And
would
do-
seem to me it would be a separate decision. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking revenue is revenue. It doesn't matter if it comes in as green money or gold or silver or whatever, it's still revenue. So I think my first thought would be that money generated from sales of tickets and other things to participate in one of the shows or whatever you want to call it, which I think is what you're saying is that program service revenue, that would include anything they raised for a program. Is that the way you understand that?
Plus the
Rob?
revenue, Kevin. Plus from your suggestion, it would be plus their revenue would go towards the match, correct?
It would be 1A and 2A, everything included in that is what I'm thinking it should be. But that's just one opinion.
Well, I think that's helpful to them. That's perhaps a little easier where they can count revenue towards that.
I like the idea of being consistent.
And do we want to require a match then?
I would be in favor of it and trying to get something that they could be able to pin up and say, this is something that we're going to see ongoing in the future, right? We're matching our park tax funds with, for our parks with, impact fees, and also, quite frankly, the match is the operational side every year. Someone's got to go mow all those lawns and service all that, and that's not coming out of the park tax side of things. So I feel like there's just got to be some kind of consistent message that we give. I think last year was a good trial year, and maybe this year we can dial in just a little bit more.
Did we not come to some kind of a tentative decision before on a percentage match? I'm maybe remembering it was just discussion, but it seemed like for each dollar they were able to raise, we did a certain dollar or two or three or whatever it was. Do you remember anything about that, Rob?
I don't off the top of my head.
I'm probably just dreaming.
Lots
Okay.
of discussions and stuff like that. I think we kind of went with any revenue was the match, but I come back at it, and I'm just going to give you my personal opinion. Fundraising has to be a foundation of any nonprofit to be sustainable. You start looking at other revenue categories, and if you don't have a strong fundraising base and support from your local community, it's going to be hard to sustain going forward. So that's why I've been so focused on the fundraising side. I think it shows the ability to go pound those streets and really ask for those dollars, and that's the hard work. I do think it's great to reward creativity, but I think it's important that we look at that. And that's probably the biggest concern that I have looking at this nonprofit is the lack of fundraising. Kudos to them for going and getting the Valentine Theater, and I think that's going to help their revenue. But I just see that as something that's very important is their fundraising going forward. So that's why I'm zeroed in on it, but I would be happy to look at other things. I'm not 100% tied to it, but that's why I really would love to see fundraising be a portion of it.
I think we have to ask ourselves the question, because, I mean, this is, are we looking for the success of TAF, or are we saying, we have granted through these precious taxes that we received, we have granted a substantial amount of money to the Timpanogos Arts Foundation. We are looking for some of that. We are looking for some fruits of the taxpayers who have, contributed in that. We are looking for that to happen rather than just be a dole. Do we believe this is something that will help them? As from Reggie's last presentation, we did see signs of fundraising. So we did see a little bit of that there. I mean, where are we landing on this? Are we saying, gosh, we've divvied up a lot of money and there seems to be nothing happening? Where are we landing? Because I think that helps us make a determination how we want to fund this going forward.
Well, I think what we're doing, we want them to be successful and contribute to the community, to the people, and to the quality of life. But we can't always count on this sales tax money. So we want them to be successful even in a bad year for the tax revenues or the park tax money. So that's what we're striving for.
Right, and so it's kind of a encouraged management style we are bringing before this. I don't think the care tax in Orem, I don't think has matching funds. I think it's just by virtue of these organizations knowing what they need to do in order to be successful. And I don't think there's anyone here on this meeting that doesn't want to see them be successful. But if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always got. And so is that what we're saying, Rob? Is that where you're landing? Is that this is hopefully a way to encourage their success and help them achieve that?
I think so. I mean, like I said, very encouraged with the Valentine Theater effort and the creativity that went into that. I think that's important. I think that our arts, here's my big worry, and I hope it's okay to be very blunt. If this doesn't get passed again by the residents, just past experience, before park tax existed, guess what's going to happen? They're going to come wanting the money out of the general fund. And they're going to say arts is still important in American Fork. And I would hope if that was the case, there's some kind of foundation built towards some self-sustainability, not maybe 100%, but we're working towards that every year. I think we can also come back and justify the dollar amount going in, saying, look, these guys are out there beating the streets. They're doing their best. Kudos to them, just like they have this last year. And we're able to say, great job. So I don't know if that answers your
Yeah,
question.
Absolutely makes sense. Absolutely makes sense.
Another way to structure it perhaps is to maybe have like a certain percentage of their income or something can only be from, like if I'm just throwing a number out for example, but only 50% of their income can come from the park tax or something like that.
Camden, you had something you were going to say?
Yeah. I'm kind of acting as a pastor. I was texting Reggie regarding the Heritage pageant, which he said they would try and hold it either this fall or next spring, depending on what is allowed. So I think that's in line with what you guys were saying. He also mentioned that it'd be difficult to do the deep reorganizational changes that they're planning on doing to be more efficient, effective, and streamlined, and then to have to spend resources doing the matching. He's for the matching. I'm just relaying to you. He's expressing his concern on being able to do all the organizational changes as well as doing the matching, meeting all the matching requirements as well. So just relaying that.
Thanks, Camden.
So
sure.
Oh, sorry, Stacy.
No, I was just saying, sure, like he's hoping to reduce expenses, which also does go a ways in helping them become more sustainable because they require less money.
So I'm going to just throw an idea out there and trying to get this to move along a little bit. I think that there's, I'm gathering some feelings from other council members that's been expressed that maybe needs to be more than fundraising. So what I would suggest is 100% match on the funds that are in the administrative budget. And that 100% match would come from any income sources that they would have. So they've got a match. What was it, 45,000 or how much was the total?
47.
On the administration side of things, 47,000.
And that is not a full grant.
So, but because the way this normally works is they would get that at the beginning. So they would get that in July 1. And obviously they can't prove that they've matched it over the following year until July 1 of the next year. But by then they've already spent the 47,000.
Last year we broke it up. They received half of their administrative monies, and then they had to show the matching funds in order to get the second half.
And the administration ask was 90,000 this year.
So, and that's part of why I say 100% on the administration, because if they're budgeting that they got to spend 90,000 anyway on administration, they're going to come up with that 50, that other match. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think it would be easier for them to raise. Well, yeah. It is what it is.
Because originally that 47 was a 45, was it not? And it was just split right in half.
Yeah, Reggie with they have had Reggie be a full-time administrator come on, so that amount went up, and then as he said, he's making a lot of the changes in there, being there full-time. We just as a council need to come up with a motion now to kind of solidify this and go forward. I mean, these are the amounts we have that you see before you.
I like the idea of half and half like we did last year. I don't know how to put that into a motion, but I do like that idea of the half and half personally. Half now or half in the start of the year and half halfway through.
So
we'll see. No, that doesn't work. I can't figure that out because when they get the money at the beginning of the year, then that's when the clock starts for them to start getting fundraising. But they then have already had their money, or at least half their money.
Half their money.
So my understanding there, Stacy, is with matches from other organizations I've been a part of, you have the whole year to get that match. That's the important thing, right? So like the boat harbor, they give us that 1.4 million. If we use the county as an example, they don't say, hey, we'll pay dollar for dollar every time you guys can show that you have the money and we pay the bill equally. They give you the 1.4 and there's a good faith contract that you got to pay that back. Otherwise you're on the hook for, that contract. So they've got a year. So they may go 3 months using everything from the grant, but then they've got to be able to get that fundraising up the rest of the year. That makes sense? So it's not on us to micromanage how they do their accounting. They have to make it good in their reporting by the end of the year, according to the contract. Maybe Shirley will correct me, but that's my understanding is they just got to show by the end of the time that they spent half of that, they matched whatever our requirement was. Didn't matter when they met that match during the year.
We can certainly craft the contract to read that way. That's not how we did it last year, but I'm happy to craft that provision. That's not a problem.
Does anyone would like to take a shot at a motion for this?
Did
Noting all
Councilmember
the
Barnes, have one more issue on section 10?
I do. I'm
Yes,
trying
I
to
think you
figure
did.
out the years, but that could be after the motion, could it not?
Well, no, because your motion would be approving the ordinance with whatever changes that you guys have discussed.
Okay, so right there on number 10, it talks about the COVID and that they're unable to expend the money for 2018, 2019. I thought we're talking about the money for 2019, 20.
We are,
So-
Kevin, but they have many events in the spring of this year, which would go towards the allocation that they received last year.
So the funds you're allocating right now are the 2019, 2020 fiscal year funds.
Well, see, Shirley, there on number 10, where it says 2020, 2021. It should
That's
just
where
be
I'm getting confused.
back
That's-
one
that's-
year.
Yeah.
There's too
Well,
many
it's-
different years there for me. Sorry.
So it's because the funds for 2019, 2020 fiscal year, what are being distributed this year, or you guys are discussing distribution of, but the actual use of those funds are during the 2020, 2021 fiscal year.
So follow me here, Shirley. We just have to subtract 1 year. We're just 1 year behind what we're currently doing right now, right?
Yes, but the way that section 10 reads is because we're saying that the 2018, 2019 funds essentially get rolled over into the 2019, 2020 funds. But the 2019, 2020 funds are actually spent during the 2020, 2021 fiscal year. Councilmember Carol's giving me the head
I
nod,
got
so
it.
know I'm
It
making
makes sense.
to
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah, it works.
I guess I'm
Yeah.
confused because I thought we didn't save up the funds to spend them. We collect them during the fiscal year.
So the funds are essentially, we have to spend the funds in their, or we have to allocate the funds in their entirety from the prior year's collection. And that's why there's always a little bit left over every year, because we don't want to over allocate from the prior year. So for example, that's why we had some funds that could be used for the backstop, because those were some of those extra funds from the prior year. Those were 2018, 2019 funds.
I
So
guess
further understanding needed on that.
I am a little confused because we did talk about, I don't know, the money that we're collecting right now has already been spent. That's what I've been told. There isn't a fund that collects during the year. So the money, the tax dollars we're collecting for July 1 is already what we're allocating right now. We are going forward, not in arrears on allocations. That's what I've been told. So we don't,
David, can you provide some clarification on that? Because that wasn't my understanding from prior years.
Mine either.
I thought we collected and whatever we have, that's why we're anticipating what we're going to have a total by June 30th. And then that would
Correct.
be the following year.
Well,
That's
then,
my understanding as well.
Yeah, we've always had, from the very beginning, we've always had an estimate that the Park Tax Committee was given an estimate for the year.
and
That
they
was
were
always my
given,
understanding.
they were given one recently that was $100,000 or $200,000 less for the 2021 year, and that's why all those budgets had to be cut originally. Is that not correct?
Well, I
That's
think
I think
it is, but
talking
that's
about-
because the COVID impacted starting, back in February, March, or really March. And from March through June 30th, there's going to be an impact on sales tax. So that's the funds that you're looking to allocate right now is what's still being collected.
there's
I
just a
think
real
the
easy way to
difference-
remedy this is just have Anna tell us what's in that fund right now. Do we've got $800,000 to $900,000 in that fund, or do we
Yeah,
have?
that's exactly what I was going to do. There's approximately $925,000 in the fund balance. And so the estimate for next year is the estimated amount of sales tax that we expect to receive in the next fiscal year. And it is lower because of the COVID-19
Correct.
than in previous years.
That I misunderstood
think-
from last meeting.
I think the problem is we have two different types of years. We have the collection year and the expense year. And they match, but they're two different years.
So, Councilman Taylor, I'll go ahead. I'm going to make a motion here.
Wait,
Yeah,
Rob, I
that's-
have one more wrench to put in the mix. It's pretty pointed for us to make just one part of one organization do this and not have anybody else who has similar things do this. What is the rationale for only making TAF do it?
That's why I asked that question early on, is what was
So-
our purpose?
So I look at it and I look at the dollar amounts that are being allocated. There is a huge difference between there's only other 501c3 nonprofit that's getting money. The next closest one is 35,000. So they're not having a huge portion of their arts program being funded through
Park tax.
the park tax fund. That's the reason for that. And that's why I feel comfortable with the justification. Now, on the city funds, people are going to come back and say, why aren't you requiring a match on the city funds? I see it as a match because we have to have the operational expense and everything else. Sorry, did I start breaking up there?
Just a little.
You did.
Okay.
Is
Well,
it,
We got
is
it.
it the amount?
got
Is it the amount of money or is it the percentage of their expense?
Well, the amount of money is hugely significant. They are number
Oh,
two
yeah.
behind the city. So, and that's why I asked that question, is because I know CARE does not have matching funds. And so how we set this up was going to be critical.
so I look at it, is ACT still going to be around if they don't get 30 grand next year? Yeah, they may have to cut back some performances. Is Friends of the Quilting Circle still going to be around? Yeah, maybe they don't have as many sewing machines, but Wasatch Dance, Harrington Center for the Arts, but will Timpanogos Foundation. I mean, if their fundraising was only 20 grand last year, I don't know how they still perform similar with only cutting a few performances. That'd be a huge disadvantage to them. And I see them coming back on the city's general fund, wanting to be able to have that funded like they did prior to Park. I don't know if that's a good rationale or not, Stacy, but Councilman Carroll, that's what my thoughts are.
Okay, yeah, I think as long as we have, reason, right, why we're picking that out. I think the CARES tax, they don't have any matching funds, of course, but I think they might have some requirements about, like I mentioned, percentage of their revenue coming from CARES tax, care funds or something like that. I saw that somewhere and that's why I mentioned it. I hate to misspeak without verifying, but I kind of, in my mind, I'm thinking it might be the CARES tax.
Okay. So anything else, Councilman Member Carroll, before Rob finishes his motion?
No, I'll let him start his motion.
I'll move to adopt the ordinance approving the disbursements of the fiscal year 2019-2020 park tax funds as presented and follow this and allow the city administrator to enter into disbursement contracts with substantially similar to those presented under the direction of the mayor with the following changes. That we add the Friends Quilting Circle to the ordinance with the right legal language for the $2,000 for the guild project. Is that right? The flag guild. And that we remove the, where am I at? I don't see it on this other one. Oh, there, where is it?
It's down, it's, you have to go into the document afterwards, the ordinance, to actually see the breakout. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, the Taft one. So the 245 included the,
Concluded the history pageant for
Thank you,
$4,500.
so we'll remove the history pageant and reallocate those 4,500 to the
Building equipment grant.
yeah, and go ahead and reduce by 1,900 the, oh man,
Children's programming room.
there you go. Thank you for your help. And put in the requirement for a match on the administration of TAF for 100% of the 47,000 coming from any sources of revenue as identified on the 990.
I'll second.
Have a
And
motion,
are we,
council
are
member.
we,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Shirley.
Mayor Pro Tem, are we also including in that motion, allowing the city administrator to enter into the disbursement contracts with the terms presented to and under the direction of the mayor?
Yeah,
I thought
Yes,
he
that was
mentioned
in there.
that.
Okay, I missed that. I'm sorry.
I don't know how in that well-crafted, really well function I had there, you know, very.
That was very smooth with multiple submittals on that as well. So I have a motion from Councilmember Shelton, and I have a second from Councilmember Carroll. Any further discussion on this? Do we want to mix in the numbers of COVID-19 to the 2018-2019 minutes, or try to draw any further confusion there with that?
I caused enough problem.
There's no room for humor. There's no room for levity this evening. I apologize. Hearing no additional comments, we will take a roll call vote.
Hey, I'm laughing.
Say what?
I'm laughing.
Thanks, Kevin. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye. Ha ha.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor votes aye as well. Thank you. We will go now on to item number 3, review and action on the water banking agreement with the Iran Family Trust. Do we need to have Mr. Sensenbauer talk to us on this? Is there any questions? It was pretty straightforward.
I haven't read the packet and I don't have any questions. I'll move to authorize the city to sign the water banking agreement with water rights for the Haran Family Trust.
Have a motion from Councilmember Shelton.
Second.
Have a second from Councilmember Christiansen. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
And Councilmember Taylor votes aye as well. Takes us to action item number 4, review and action on a resolution. Review and action on subdivisions, commercial projects, condominiums, and PUDs, including 1, plat approval, method of satisfaction, 2, method of satisfaction, water right requirements, posting of an improvement bond or setting of a time frame for improvement installation, and 4, authorization to sign the final plat and acceptance of all the dedication to the public to have the plat recorded. A, review and action on the ordinance approving a commercial site plan located at 64 North, 900 West in the G2C planned commercial zone. You're probably all familiar with this. It came before the Planning Commission. It was denied. Quite straightforward. Do we need to have staff address this for any of us?
I don't see how we could approve something that goes against our ordinance. We'd have to have a petition and consider changing the ordinance before we could approve it.
I would
So
concur.
I move to deny the ordinance approving a commercial site plan located at 64 North, 900 West in the GC2 planned commercial zone.
I have a motion from Councilmember Christensen.
I would like to second that one.
Second from Councilmember Barnes. Any further discussion? Once again, we appreciate the Planning Commission for drawing and giving us light on that. We'll go ahead with a roll call vote. Councilmember Christensen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor votes aye as well. Thank you. Now B, review and action on an extension of approval on the final plat and ordinance of adopting the site plan of Dixie Farms A, B, C, D, and G located in the vicinity of 900 West and 100 South.
1,000.
1,000 South. You are correct. Thank you, Barbara.
As far as I understand, this is just an extension of what we've already passed, right?
Correct.
Okay, in that case, I'm happy to make the motion. I move to approve the final plats and ordinance adopting the site plans of the Dixie Farm plats A, B, C, D, and G flexible lot PUD projects in the area of 800 to 1,000 West and 620 1,000 South in the PR 3.0 planned residential zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plats and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold the recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the March 20th, 2019, April 17th, 2019, and April 17th, 2019 Planning Commission meetings.
Thank you,
What?
Councilmember Carroll. We have a motion from Councilmember Carroll. Do I have a second?
I do have a question. I didn't notice this before, but you've got the April 17th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting twice. Should there be a different date?
That is from the Department of Redundancy Department, Barbara, and as it should be there.
If I can just make a comment, that should be, I believe, the next Planning Commission meeting. So I'll make that correction.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Carroll. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second from Councilmember Barnes. Any further discussion on the motion?
Just one quick observation. If I understood this right or correctly, this is truly something that they had no control over. It's totally related to the sewer district and them not being able to hook up and complete their project.
I will let staff address that.
I may be the best one to address that. Councilman, that is correct. They've been working, moving forward. It just sometimes takes a while to get things approved, and they did change their course a couple of times in terms of where they wanted to tie in. So sometimes things take a while. Nothing that we're doing holding them up, but I thought it was a fair reason to ask for an extension, so we recommended approval.
I think so too. I agree with that. It is a pretty big project after all.
It is.
When you add them all together.
Very.
Thank you, Scott, for that additional clarification. So I have a motion and a second. I'll now call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christensen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor votes aye as well. Action item number 5, review and action on a resolution providing for the continuity of government pursuant to the provisions of the Emergency Interim Succession Act. We are all familiar with this. We go through this every year. Any questions discussion on this item?
The only one I brought up in past years. I know it's probably never likely to happen, but I don't know if it ever hurts just to throw the other two council members on there. That way there's a clear succession in case, heaven forbid, something very drastic happened, or someone's out of town or whatever that may be. Don't think it's very likely, but I don't know what the harm would be to throw them on there. So if possible, I'd suggest Kevin be D and I'd be E.
No, I'm E.
It would be Barbara.
It'd be Barbara.
Oh, I'm
not me.
sorry. Barbara, you're D. My bad.
No,
I'm
I'm
B as
E.
in boy.
So, okay,
Legal question on that, Sherilyn.
Yes.
Are we required to have those, a minimum of 3? Do we have any requirements for max or anything like that?
The statute specifically calls out that you have to have the next 3 in line listed. That's why we've always put 3 forward. It doesn't say you can't have more than that, but it specifically states that we have to have succession of three slots.
Minimum of 3?
It just says 3. So it doesn't say it's a minimum, doesn't say it's a maximum. It just says
Just
that you have
flat out
to
says
identify
3.
the next 3.
Okay, thanks.
so
I
would
have no
someone like to
problem
make a
with
motion
that.
noting that.
I'd go ahead and make a motion to adopt the resolution establishing the continuity in government in American Fork City with the addition of council member Barbara Christiansen as D and Rob Shelton as E. Is that the order or they reversed?
Yeah, I feel really good with that.
Do I
You
have a
just want to
motion
be
from
on there, but you
Councilmember
want to be
Barnes?
last.
Just want it very clear. I don't have any real reason in emergency to do anything. I'm the last one to call.
I have a motion from Councilmember Barnes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Councilmember Shelton. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor votes aye as well. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, review and action of a resolution adopting fireworks restrictions for American Fork City. This is all quite self-explanatory. Is there any need for staff's input? We can ask for Chief Brems on this, but it was all contained in our packets.
Yeah, I had a chance to read it. I was just wondering on section 1C, it says fireworks shall only be discharged at the above referenced parks. Does that mean we're not allowing any fireworks in any neighborhoods?
It's a good question.
Well, because I kind of looked at it, I'm sure the fire chief could really answer, or David. But when I looked at it, it did say that all city streets were allowed.
So these are aerial fireworks, less than 150 feet, and the chief can chime in too. But so yeah, it would, if you're going to go into the public right of way, then you can go into the streets and into these parks right here.
Yeah, like David said, everything that's sold legally can be shot from the street. State law permit allows that. Anything over 150 feet that's in the city-owned parks, those are the parks that are allowed in, just for fallout and kind of spread out through the city the best we could.
This is the same list. It looks very similar to last year's.
It's identical to the last 2 years, and we've had really good success with it.
I wasn't smart enough to find the old one, so thank you.
Don't you sell yourself short, Kevin. You're plenty smart.
No, I'm not.
Reading over this, does anyone have a motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion. I move to approve the resolution adopting annual fireworks restrictions in American Fork City.
Thank you, Councilmember Carroll. We've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion?
I know it's probably small and we know what it's intended, but I was just still hung up on that fireworks shall only. I mean, that's all fireworks. is what that's saying. Ground fireworks, aerial, it's not describing anything in that, and I think that might be helpful.
Sure. Can you point out which section you're
I'm
referencing?
sorry, section 1C.
Okay, you're right.
Is the concern that people can't light them on their own property?
No, on the streets even. Can you scroll down a little bit more, Vendeline? Does it not say in this actual ordinance that they can do it in the streets? Because that's what the other documentation said, but apparently this doesn't say that.
The way that I read it, interpreted it, was that even ground fireworks, the way that this reads as I read it, can only be done at city parks.
Chief, is this
And in
only-
accordance with the map of approved parks, yeah.
Chief, is this ordinance it's really isolated to aerial fireworks, correct?
Yeah, like I said before, anything that's sold legally can, I mean, you guys have seen it in the years past. Everyone's welcome to light it off in the streets. This is just basically for aerial fireworks.
So can we add a definition in this that the definition of fireworks is any firework that is greater than 150 feet?
Yeah,
So
we
It says that in B.
No,
No, there's another one that says greater than, it's down a little ways.
So if
So
you look at section,
it should call it out. I just can't operate the screen, but
if you
it says
look
ground
at,
fireworks will be allowed at all parks.
so if you look at section 1A, ground fireworks will be allowed at all parks. So you can go at any park. Aerial fireworks less than 150 feet can be at these parks. Then it has a list.
but
If
it
it's
doesn't.
If it's
it
over
doesn't-
100,
Hang on, Kevin. Go ahead, David.
Sorry,
if it's over 150 feet, then you have to get a permit for that. So what it's saying is you can light off all your fireworks at all the parks. It's legal to go in any park, but if they're less than 150 feet, you need to go to one of these parks. If it's more than 150 feet, then you have to get a permit. If you go to the map, I believe there is a legend there. So ground fireworks, let me see if I can see this on my map.
it's on there. Go down. There you go.
See where it says city streets? So you can light them off in ground fireworks in all the city streets. And you can light off aerials less than 150 feet in city streets and all those parks. Private property, of course, you have to get the private property owner's permission for that. And if it's your property, that's fine.
Okay.
Could we just add a
And on
sentence-
section,
C, I'm sorry, go ahead, Barbara.
Could we just add a section or a sentence in there according to the chart listed below?
We have that in C. That's already contained
Okay.
in C. Shall be referenced in above referenced parks and in accordance with the map of approved parks, see Exhibit A.
Great.
I think it conflicts. I just would like to say aerial fireworks less than 150 feet shall only be discharged in the above referenced parks. That would solve the confusion. By saying all fireworks or fireworks shall only be discharged, that's hitting the whole gamut, that you can only light fireworks in parks. But like I said, I don't mean to make a mountain out of a molehill. I just was trying to add some clarification so people could read that and clearly understand that what the intent was for those aerial fireworks less than 150 feet.
Why don't you just add the word aerial, so it's aerial fireworks shall only be discharged above referenced parks.
I
Could you?
think,
Yeah.
we're just adding to this. I realize this, and you all know how adamantly against I am spelling this out. So, I mean, we have the exhibit there. We talk about parks. If you bring up, it's all according to that exhibit. You see Exhibit A, we have the city streets there. We have what fireworks are allowed there and what not. Do we really need to add this additional verbiage?
I don't think so, but I mean, most people are gonna be looking at the map.
So my question on B, as in boy, is this referencing to, these are the only city parks that can be used?
For aerial fireworks less than
aerials.
150 feet.
We don't want them launching off the aerials at any other park.
Well, that's why I'm saying the word only ought to be in there. Will be allowed to be discharged only at the fall.
But it's not only at the following parks though, Kevin. It's at any city street.
But that's exactly what C says. C says only be discharged at the above referenced parks. C is referring to A. And
Okay, gotcha.
that's why it's
Gotcha.
only here, so that the fire department doesn't have to go watch every
Right.
single park in the whole city. We station firefighters strategically to go watch these parks.
And that's what I thought it was. I just wasn't quite connecting B and C, so I'll shut up.
No, you're good. To me, I feel like it's pretty clear, and it's enforceable from our fire marshal and the fire department. I think they understand what this means. I don't think it's too unreasonable there, but
I thought it was pretty clear too until the discussion started.
Didn't mean to open a can of worms. I'll go ahead and vote on it. My bad.
I don't think we have a motion yet.
Yeah, I made a motion.
Did we? Do we have a second?
Second,
So we have a
If you
motion
don't-
from Councilmember Carroll, a second from Councilmember Christiansen. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead with a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
and I will vote aye also. Thank you. Item number 7, review and action on an ordinance adopting modifications to section 15.16 of the American Fork City Code relating to flood plan management.
I did. Can I just jump in here and ask a question?
Please.
I was wondering if the map changed substantially from last time they did it.
Councilwoman Carroll, they always change a bit. I wouldn't say substantially. I mean, it's really, there are changes. I'd probably be hard pressed to point them out to you, but I know right now to get into the details, but they're not major. They just, these are updated by FEMA every so many years. And when we do it, they want us to change our ordinance, to update the ordinance to match their model ordinances. And by virtue of that, also adopt these maps as our official maps too.
Okay. Follow-up question. I know we have a road, I can't remember what we're calling it, that's going to be our defend, no defend line. Does that still match up with this map?
Lake Shore,
Yeah, Lake Shore.
yes.
Yes.
Let me make sure I understand the question. You said, make sure they match up.
So my understanding was that map helps us to guide where we can have a defend and no defend line. Is that incorrect?
The defend, no defend line is not necessarily a FEMA function. They're really, David, and correct me if I misspeak here, but they're really separate issues. The FEMA really is the low-lying areas susceptible to flooding.
Sure, yeah.
So they're not really related. FEMA doesn't, I don't say they don't care. That's probably not the right way to say it. But in terms of where that defend, no defend line is and what it means, that's not something they get into.
Okay.
the defend, no defend line has more to do with the outlet structure
Right.
going into the Jordan River, and how the lake is going to be controlled in elevation by pushing water into the Jordan River. So that's more how the defend, no defend line was established, was through agreement on controlling lake level.
So my understanding, it's elevation, not a street, but we've identified that street to be at a certain elevation to be there. But if they came in and put in fill material, I think it's 4,000 some odd thousand feet, can't remember, but it's an elevation that they have to open the floodgates.
It's an elevation.
Correct.
Okay.
So just a little tidbit of information. Some of you probably already know this. If you are borrowing money for a home and a corner of your property, the furthest corner from the home, 10 feet of that comes into the FEMA zone, you're then deemed to be in a flood zone and you will be required to buy flood insurance. Obviously, if the whole property's in there, you're required to do that. And that really is just when you're borrowing money to purchase a home, and your mortgage people and everybody else are supposed to keep track of that and make sure that it's proper.
Just a little tidbit brought to you by our own Kevin Barnes, insurance salesman extraordinaire.
Yeah. So it does affect people. It's a strange little thing in some cases. It really can be. Dry Creek in Lehigh, which is named Dry Creek for a reason, actually is in the flood zone.
Places that it'd be surprising what's in a flood zone and what's not. And just a little bit of more tidbit information, but most traditionally, the only place you can buy flood insurance is through the federal government. I don't know if that's changed, but that's my understanding how it's been. And they'll only sell insurance to people who live in communities that participate in this National Flood Insurance Program. So having the city participate in this program, establish these ordinances is really crucial for our citizens to be able to get flood insurance when they either need it or want it. If they don't, even if they aren't mandated, if they still want it, we have to do this for our citizens. So really what today is taking that changes to those ordinances and adopting these. And, you know, if you've got any more questions, I can help try to answer them.
Thank you, Scott. It's a good point. Any additional questions? Hearing none, I would accept a motion.
I move to approve the ordinance adopting modifications to section 15.16 of the American Fork City Code relating to floodplain management.
Thank you, Councilmember Carroll. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilmember Shelton. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
I will vote aye also. Thank you very much. Item number 8, review and action on an ordinance amending section 17.5.128, section 5.32.060 of the city code relating to signs and advertising structures. This is really interesting. Camden and I had a discussion on this last week. It seems like this time of year, it is always only the city candidates who have any respect for where they place their signs. Signs are cropping up everywhere for governor, for county recorder, and all of these things, and they are literally slapping them on any open spot of land in a city park or any of those things. That's only one part of this, but it's interesting how this year brings that out.
I got involved in a little bit with that with our ordinance enforcement, code enforcement officer, because they did show up in parks, church parks, everywhere. And he told me that one of the candidates campaign manager says, you can't stop me from putting them in public places. So my understanding was he was referred to our attorney, but the end result is all of his signs have been taken down.
Yeah,
Which is what we wanted.
Just to clarify, this amendment merely reinforces what's always been the policy of American Fork City, and cleans up a couple of sections that really just needed cleaned up.
I think it's also interesting, and I appreciate this ordinance very much in American Fork, because in some neighboring cities, you're able to see the signs along every city tree on thoroughfares and different things, and it it's unappealing to me. It may not be unappealing to everyone else, but it's very unappealing to me. So I, for one, appreciate what our city does to make sure that is in order.
I
So-
agree with you completely, Clark. And as I read it, Cheryl, and I think it does clear it up quite a bit. It makes it very clear, but I did have one question, and I'm on page 111 of the packet. It's under the big section 2, and then I'm gonna say paragraph number 6, where it says garage sale in red, and then it's been crossed out, and then it says handbill signs. In part A there, it says on the second line, or upon any public utility pole. My question is, what's a public utility pole? For example, are the power poles considered public utility poles? That's really
Yes.
what I'm after.
Yes,
They are?
they are.
Okay, good.
Now, our ability to get around and police those and get those pulled down and that is another thing, but
I've got some phone numbers if you need some help and some ideas.
Sorry, Sherlyn, you're muted.
The real change on the signs was adding just the clarifier that you have to have permission of the or of the property owner in the main, the start of this section.
Well, if I could, I had a question on that because it looks like we also added a section that I think is contradictory. Item 3 says public property, no signs for the purpose of advertisement, political promotion, or advertisement shall be permitted in the public right of way.
Correct.
We have a whole section that we did a few years ago with the downtown businesses that allowed it A-frames. So if we're looking in the code, their section E is all about the regulation of A-frames on downtown in the public right of way. And then this also says the more stringent code will prevail. So I'm worried that we will undo unintentionally all of those A-frame signs in downtown that we worked hard with those business owners to do.
We can certainly alter on 3 and just limit it to no signs for the purpose of political promotion. But is that, as long as council's comfortable with doing that, I wasn't aware of the downtown. I was looking specifically at this section and making those changes.
Is there a way to carve out the A-frame signs for downtown? I get worried that if we leave it open-ended everywhere in town, that then we get back to a situation where it's hard to enforce.
Yes, we can start that off with the exception of signs permitted in accordance with, and then I'd have to pull that code for the A-frame signs. No signs for the purpose. We can add that exception language at the start of that provision.
And I think what we did is we created I don't know if I can still share my screen or not, but no. Anyway, I got the code pulled up here. It just says the downtown A-frame zone, and that's how it refers to it, is an overlay zone. So I wonder if we just add the language that we carve out, excluding the downtown A-frame overlay zone.
What code are you looking at?
That is section 17.5.128. Under that same section that we're looking to amend, but it is under, so we have section A1 that we're trying to amend, and then you go down to section 2B, refers to the downtown overlay zone. And then the whole section on the regulation is further down in section E. And so
So
I
on,
think,
on the screen, you can see section E, regulation for A-frame signs. Could we start out this, this section on item number 3 with accepting this section E?
Yes, absolutely you can.
Okay.
I think that would be the way to go.
and then I'm just curious, how many people actually get their garage sale stickers? You know, we passed that, gosh, 15 years ago. I wonder how many people actually do that anymore. So anyway.
What is, I don't even know what that is, a garage sale sticker?
Yeah, if you're gonna put a sign up advertising a garage sale, you have to come to the city and pay a fee and get a seal that you put on your sign to show that you got approval from the city to put up your garage sale sign.
And you're limited to 3 or 6 signs
That's
or
a
something
certain
like
number.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to open another can of worms. I'm trying to get back to the motion here, and I'm happy to.
Sure.
So I'll move to adopt the ordinance amending section 17.5.128 and section 532.060 of the city code relating to signs and advertising structures with the following changes: that in section 17.5.128 A2, A3, that it exempt the overlay A-frame sign referenced in section E later on.
So I have a motion from Councilmember Shelton. Does that verbiage work, Sherilyn?
It does.
Okay, so I have a
I'll
motion from
second it.
Councilmember Shelton. I have second from Councilmember Barbara Christiansen. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
and I will vote aye as well. Thank you. Rob, a little more attention to detail in the future, if you wouldn't mind. please.
Appreciate it. Yep, I'll come more
Okay.
prepared with those motions. I'm sorry.
Action item number 9, adjournment. Do
So
I have a
moved.
motion?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. Councilmember Barnes, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Carroll. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:47 PM.
Thanks, everyone. Good seeing you.
Thank you for your patience tonight, everyone.
See y'all. Well done, Clark.
We'll have to do
Thank
this
you.
again someday.
On vacation, Barbara.
Thank you.
Right.